So we're going to introduce logs, metrics, and traces into a Coralogix account from a Lambda function in AWS using nothing but the telemetry layer in Coralogix. So the Lambda telemetry exporter, really simple. We have some documentation already in place for this. So as with other integration tutorials, what we're going to do is we're just going to go through the documentation step by step, and we'll show you each stage and maybe have a discussion around some of the finer points of the configuration as well. So you can see there's a breakdown here of everything you're going to need to do. You essentially need an AWS account and an existing Lambda function and so on. So I've already got a Lambda function. I called it my hello world function. It logs out some home truths like Coralogix is the best platform in the world. And it also has an event bridge trigger that's running every minute. Essentially, it's just a cron job that runs every minute just to keep that Lambda function flowing. So essentially, this tutorial is really, really easy. Step one is we're going to add some environment variables to the Lambda function. And step two is we're going to add a Lambda layer, all of which can be done by just simply following the tutorial. So let's do the environment variables first. So from your Lambda function, you're in there, we go to configuration, then environment variables. You click edit, and then that takes you to the environment variables edit screen. Add an environment variable. So you can read down each stage in the documentation here. We're going to return back to the Lambda layer in a second. You can see we have some configuration options here. So CX domain is the domain in which you've already set up. So you open up this link and you have your domain. Your domain is the left-hand column here. I am in EU West 1, so it makes my domain coralogix.com. So we're going to add that one first. So CX domain coralogix.com. Easy. Next one is the CX private key. I'll do that last. Obviously, I don't want to publish my private key on the page, on the video. So what I'll do is I will just take that off screen and add that and then bring it back. CX reporting strategy is really important. So let's get into that. So there's actually a section on reporting strategies in the documentation. Read it in detail, but briefly, if you have a function that's called all the time, like very heavily invoked, what you don't want to do is have the telemetry layer adding a lot of overhead onto that. So the best way, if you have a really, really heavily sort of used Lambda function, is the low overhead invocation. So what this does is it essentially batches up the sending of your telemetry data. So it's not sending every single invocation, and therefore it's not adding that overhead to every single invocation. However, the cost is that your telemetry may be a little bit slower. So up to minutes, so we're not talking about like long delays, but there may be some delays in how often telemetry is sent. So it's all about the speed of which data is sent. Then you have report after invocation. This is really useful if you have a Lambda function that's invoked sort of rarely, but only has short sort of execution times. What this means is that the you want to just report after invocation. What that means is that the invocation happens and then it sends. And then finally you have report during and after. This is for rarely called functions that have long execution times. It even says like 15 seconds or more. It adds a couple of seconds of billable time to each invocation, but it's the most reliable and the fastest. So you get reporting during and after invocation as well. Really important if you have long-running Lambdas, because it's not, the actual duration of the invocation may be too long a delay to actually find out an invocation has happened, So have a read of those strategies. It's really, really important that you understand them. I'm just going to pick report after invocation because my Lambda is rarely called and it only takes a few seconds to run. So I'm going to take that there. And the name of the environment variable is cx_reporting_strategy. So back to my Lambda function. Paste that in. I also want to set the application name because this account that I'm using has already had some data in it, so we'll do something unique. So cx_application. So let me go back to my function, cx_application, and we'll call it Chris Hotel Lambda layer, for example. Finally, it's cx private key. So where does one get the private key from? As with other implementations of this tutorial, here's my account. It's had a bit of data in there, but you can see there's nothing from Lambda anyway. Here, settings. You can get it from your security section here, or just go to send your data and copy the private key. The options are yours. You can then go back. Now, obviously, I don't want to paste this in shot, so I'm just going to move this over here, take this, and hide you just briefly. So I can move you over here, paste it in, save that. So literally all I do is just paste in the private key into the position there. So what we've got is we have the configuration is all in place now, but it's not going to work just yet because we haven't actually defined the layer. So to define the Lambda layer is really, really simple and really straightforward. You go to layers, and you can see here that you have my face in the way, but you can see the layers down here. Add a layer. From add a layer, you can pick from an AWS layer that's already defined, custom layers that exist in your account, or you can specify an ARN. We're going to specify an ARN. Now, go back to the documentation, go up. You have this big, long list of different Lambda layer ARNs. So pick the one. There's 2 dimensions you need to select on. Number 1 is the architecture of your system. So there's x86 and ARM supported. And the next is the region. So I'm in EU West 1, and I'm using an x86 architecture Lambda. So I can see right there is my ARN. So just copy that, but find the relevant one for you based on your region and architecture. Back to add layer, add that, click verify. You'll notice there's always a version on the end here. You can't just change this to latest. There is no latest tag. It's important that you pin to a version. So compatible runtimes, no JS, that's all good. And x86 64-bit, x86 64-bit. So add that. And that, once that layer is in place, is it. What you can do then is you can essentially just invoke this a couple of times, see what happens. So I'll call it my event, for example. Save that. Test it. That looks healthy. We see some logs were written out there. And we can see that the invocation is occurring. Let's do a test again. Test. Everything looks successful. So last thing that remains is to go back to our application. You'll notice a couple of things. So first, we go to the logs. And you'll see that we have log data. And the log data here, you'll see Coralogix is the best platform in the world, which is always nice to hear. So that's really, really good. And you can see that the data's even spiked even more now after I've just clicked on it, which is awesome. You can see the application here as well. So tell Lambda layer. So we can actually zoom in this and filter just this if we want to as well. All of this means that the logs are flowing nicely. But remember, the layer doesn't just do logging, it also does traces as well. So now we have traces, and they can be filtered, they can be archived, we can do whatever we want with them, we can define alerts from them, we can customize this view any which way we like. And finally, we have metrics. So if we just create a custom dashboard, line chart, and go to metrics, and the metrics, see these FAS executions total. So if we do that, and you can see that sudden spike in invocations. So those are logs, metrics, and traces from a Lambda layer. This whole video was 8 minutes. The actual coding time is like 4 minutes. Really, really easy to do. Just simply follow the tutorial, and this will make sure that you have all the data you need to really track your Lambda function as you move forward. And don't forget about serverless APM as well, which we'll cover in a subsequent video, which is like a really detailed view of your Lambda functions and how they're all working together. Thank you very much.